What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking about Mayakashi in this video, and this one's going to be a little different. This is going to be a video where I break down each card individually, talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the cards and how they interact with the other cards in the archetype. This is going to be one where I kind of give an overview of the entire archetype. I talk about some of the things that I like about it, some of the things that I don't like, how the archetype is ideally supposed to play, some of its core strategies, etc., etc. I know that might seem a little far-fetched because it hasn't been released in the TCG and the OCG, but since the revelation of the other synchro monsters, the other 4 synchros, we have a good idea of how this archetype's going to play, some of the really nice plays that it has. And I'll admit, I have kind of trashed this archetype over the last week. I said that I really wasn't interested, throw it in the trash, and I do think that was a little premature, but overall I still believe that this archetype is a huge missed opportunity, right? But before I do that, I want to give a big thanks to Anime Amino for sponsoring this video. Are you an anime fan like myself? Well, download the Anime Amino app, available on Android or Apple iOS, with almost 1.8 million members. It's one of the largest anime communities in the world, and yeah, that includes me. Hey, if it's got JoJo on One Piece, then I'm definitely there. Connect with other anime fans, check out awesome fan art, and enjoy their camp anime, where this week, July 27th through August 4th, they're having some awesome anime t-shirt design and fanfic contests complete with prizes. So what are you waiting for? An invitation from Kyber or something? Go get the app and go get the prizes. The link's in the description. I think that the concept that Konami was going for with this archetype, where essentially you're kind of synchroing up and you're able to take a level 1 monster and turn it all the way into a level 11 powerful synchro monster that's a 3300 beater on board, that is actually quite impressive. This deck reminds me actually very much of something like Zodiac. I just think the execution of it is not nearly as good as something like Zodiac, where you looked at Zodiac and you're like, wow, Broadwell's broken and Dryden's broken and Barrage is broken. This deck is a lot of good theory, and some of the main deck monsters are incredibly powerful, but they're just missing so many of the core cornerstones of like what it takes to be a competitive deck. And then there just are a bunch of other potholes in the archetype. So to talk about the overall playstyle of the deck and really what Konami was going for, Mayakashi are a synchro based deck where you're supposed to be able to take one monster and a tuner from like your field or from your graveyard, synchro summon, and then you can pull the tuners back from the graveyard kind of infinitely. The tuner that you're going to use most of the time is beautiful Mayakashi Daki. This is an excellent card. This is actually, to be honest, if this card was in other archetypes, I would say that this card is straight up broken. It is almost level eater kind of level, because it is essentially a card that you will summon in a single turn, maybe 5 or 6 turns, as you kind of climb up the ladder from your first level 3 synchro all the way until the level 11. And these plays are incredibly easy. Now, the fact that the deck has a link monster greatly benefits it. The link monster itself is actually not that good, but really just being able to open up an extra monster zone and knowing that the link monster does get a little bit of protection when you have other synchros on the field. To be honest, all you have to do is just normal summon your wing Mayakashi Hajun and then pull out your Daki straight from your deck. Then you can go into the link, or excuse me, you can go into the synchro 3. Daki's going to activate from the graveyard. Then you can go into your 5. Daki will activate again. You go into your 7, so on and so forth, until you climb the ladder all the way up into the level 11. Now, the fact that you can get Hajun out from 1 for 1 makes the deck even better. You see how essentially you can just have one normal summon and you go from pretty much no board presence, Hajun, who only has 600 attack, into a level 11 synchro monster. It's pretty damn impressive. There's also some incredibly easy and simple 2-card combos when it comes to Mayakashis as well. These combos will allow you to end on the board with the Mayakashi Link monster, the Mayakashi level 11 synchro monster, and you'll also get the Daki from your graveyard. I think they're actually a little better if you go second, because if my math is right, you end up doing somewhere around 6,200 damage. If you have a Monster Reborn, then it can actually be easily an OTK. So they're not like the greatest boards ever, but when it comes to putting out raw damage, they're pretty nice. Also, if you go first, you get a significant amount of board presence, and some of the plays with this deck are actually like you use minimal effort to get some huge colossal beat sticks. So I definitely understand the way that Konami wants you to put big monsters on the board, and the idea of essentially working backwards through the ladder, using your graveyard kind of as a secondary resource when your monsters are destroyed by battle or by card effect, being able to summon the monsters from your graveyard for free. I'm talking about the synchros, of course, and then having those synchros activate pretty decent effects. The level 9 has like a fissure effect, and then the level 7 has like a built-in MST. I kind of understand where they're going for. It feels like Konami was trying to build Dragunity on crack, right? Just off the normal summon of a level 1 monster, you can end up with a level 11 synchro monster that has 3300 attack, and then if your opponent kills it, you progressively work yourself backwards through the ladder using your graveyard, summoning a bunch of monsters, and then getting a bunch of like nice little removal effects. It seems very practical, and in theory, it could actually work. The problem is, like, we don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! In theory, right? We actually play in a moving, evolving format where there are just so many ways to easily disrupt this deck. And I think there are two major problems when it comes to the synchro monsters, because believe it or not, I think the main deck monsters are actually all like A+ monsters in this archetype. But when you look at the synchros, the first big problem is when you drop the cards initially, when you summon them from your extra deck, they do absolutely nothing. They have no effects that activate on the field. The only thing that they actually give you is just raw damage. So even when you do go from a level 1 monster all the way into that level 11 synchro, you're not getting anything except a battering ram. So all the thing is really good for is attacking. And then when it comes to the second major problem that all these synchro monsters kind of suffer is really when you're talking about working yourself backwards through the ladder. Yes, if your opponent Regekis them, or if you attack into a mirror force, your opponent runs them over in battle, you'll constantly get monsters floating from your graveyard and popping cards on your opponent's side of the field. That sounds all fine and dandy. But what happens when you summon this level 11 synchro monster and your opponent just, uses something like an Altergeist Sequidius and bounces it back to your extra deck? Like, your entire chain is disrupted, you lose your monster, and you really don't get anything out of it, and you're not going to ever be making like extra link boards or anything like that, because Daki and so many of the other cards have effects where you can only special summon Mayakashi monsters that turn, so that pretty much kills any opportunity of really splashing in, kind of like the Nightmare cards, which is another problem I'll talk about in a second, but they're just so easily removed from the field without actually having to destroy them. I mean, every deck seems to have some just easy answer to it, whether it's like something that bounces like a Pallades or an Altergeist Sequidius. It can be something that actually sends it from the field to the graveyard without actually destroying, like Altergeist Miluseek, or Ningirasu is a card that still sees a lot of play. It can be something that just straight up snatch steals the damn thing, like Borolo Dragon. I'm pretty sure that that's still a popular Yu-Gi-Oh card. There's also, the Nightmare Unicorn. Isn't that the one that spins back to the extra deck? So there are so many ways in this format. There's also, cards that can just absorb it, like Cyber Dragon Infinity. Cyber Dragon's getting more support out of Cybernetic Horizon, so they might see more play. There are just so many easy ways of getting these cards off the board. I haven't even mentioned kaijus yet, that if you actually get disrupted in that way, your entire game plan pretty much just goes out the window. And since this deck doesn't really have any disruption, as I said before, none of the monsters have any on-field effects that actually can activate that disrupt your opponent. They gave this archetype a trap card, but for some reason, they decided to give it a revival card. Now, I understand why they did that, because all the monsters, when they're special summoned from the graveyard, the synchros, they have effects that can potentially disrupt your opponent. The problem is, they kind of gave the deck something that it didn't need. Zombies already have access to Book of Life, so that could have been one way of getting all your zombies back. Zombie World is, an option as well. But another problem is, Back to the Front and Call of the Haunted, things like that already exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! And those cards are completely unlimited. What I really don't get is, I don't get why Konami didn't give the deck something like the Shiranui style Swallow Slash. That would have been the perfect card for this archetype, because you know how I said that you get to summon your Daki whenever you make these combos. You always get your Daki on board, and your Daki is kind of useless at that point. It doesn't really serve a purpose. Your Daki could have been a perfect card to kind of tribute right there, pop a bunch of cards on your opponent's side of the field. The deck needed some type of consistent disruption. That's the point that I'm trying to make. They gave the deck a themed Call of the Haunted, which it didn't need because zombies already have access to so many similar cards. I think that was a mistake. And one big glaring problem that I think that players are going to run into almost immediately when they start trying to run this deck and they start actually building it, the deck has some serious extra deck space problems. You guys know this archetype has a whopping 5 synchro monsters and a link. That is 6 cards in the archetype that have to go go in your extra deck. And since you're playing a deck that synchros up, you're probably going to want to run, I don't know, 2 copies of all the synchros. So that's probably going to be 11 cards that you have to designate to your extra deck, and that's only running 1 copy of the Link monster. So where exactly are you ever going to have space for like utility cards that you might need, like Bolo Dragon and other, you know, Ningirasu's, like other good utility Link monsters? You're just never really going to have space for them, let alone the fact that this archetype, again, because of so many of the effects, they kind of inhibit your ability to even summon non-Mayakashi monsters anyways. I think that that's going to be a big problem. So overall, when it comes to the Mayakashi archetype, I think that it could be a whole lot of fun. There are definitely some flashy plays here. I think that the core design of the archetype is still actually fundamentally brilliant. I love the idea of just normal summoning and then boom, you just pop out a level 11 3300 attack synchro monster. I think it's kind of like super Dragonity, and then being able to potentially, you know, essentially synchro summon backwards from your graveyard. It's pretty damn cool and flashy, but does it have a chance of actually being competitive? Does it have a chance of ever really doing well at a competitive event? There are just too many problems. Number one, the synchro monsters don't do anything immediately, so you're never going to get any disruption out of them. Number two, they're way too easy to just get off the board, and if that does happen where they're not taken off the board by way of, you know, battle or card destruction, then your entire game plan kind of goes out the window. And number three, their support cards outside of Revolt, outside of their spell card, which is fantastic, I'll give them credit for that, they're just not, they're not very strong. Like, Konami really messed up when they gave this deck a Call of the Haunted instead of like some type of defensive trap, which the deck actually needed. And if Konami wasn't going to give them that defensive trap that I think they needed, what Konami could have done, and maybe you guys will say that this would have been a little too broken, they could have just made the high level synchro monsters just have, you know, targeting immunity. If they would have done that, this archetype would have been incredible. Think about if the level 11, the level 9, and the level 7 monster would have all been immune to targeting, a la Magispectors or Cosmos Ships. Like, then you would have had monsters that are incredibly difficult to get off the board, because it would have been like, all right, you can Boil Load me, you can Ningirasu, but those are like your only legitimate outs. And if I stop those cards, basically you still got to deal with this 3300, you know, Mayakashi monster kicking down your face, and it's going to be just real difficult. It would have forced your opponent into maybe 2 or 3 very risky plays to get rid of my synchro, and if those plays didn't work out, then I'm probably in the driver's seat to actually win the duel. So really good idea, and I love the artwork of this archetype, but I feel like it's wasted potential, man. I know that people say that it's really difficult to design a synchro archetype in the Reigns era, and I feel like Konami almost nailed it. Whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. If you guys enjoy this series, I will try to make more of these on other archetypes. I actually got to get back to doing kind of these general discussions. I used to do this a lot when I did, you know, Boom or Bust, and I think I am going to start getting back to that when it comes to, you know, archetypes in the game. Maybe I'll make like a Boom or Bust Cyber Dragons. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.